Hello, welcome back to Quartzlight, your car brochure channel, and welcome back to Ford Fridays. Today we're going to look at the Ford Sierra. Welcome back, and if you're new to the channel, we look at car brochures 3 times a week. So if you've got any interesting car brochures or you've got a collection yourself, do consider subscribing. But back to today's episode, the Ford Sierra. Yeah, we have looked at the Ford Sierra before, but a much later model when the saloon was introduced. These are the very first early Ford Sierras, first introduced in 1982 at the British International Motor Show at Birmingham, and they were quite controversial. We went from a very square designed Ford Cortina, which in the 80s was still selling well and was still a very popular vehicle. All of a sudden we got this jelly mold designed car, very aerodynamic compared to the Cortina. So it was a huge change, and typical conservative Ford buyers did struggle for the first few months to kind of like get their heads around it. But anyway, this Ford Sierra had the code name Tony. Yeah, they kind of like always played with these weird girl names, Tony with an I. I don't really understand the code names, but they always had a girl's name at this time for the various models. Anyway, I don't want to waffle too much. Let's get straight on with it and look at this brochure from May 1983. So yeah, we're back looking at this car's brochure from May 1983, which we've been looking at on Ford Fridays. And we was finished off looking at the Escort range and the Escort specifications. And the next car in the range, the Ford Sierra, which always surprised me because I always kind of like think the Sierra should be below the Granada, but in fact after the Sierra comes the Capri and then the Granada. You would think it would be Escort, Capri, Sierra, Granada in my mind anyway, but no, the Sierra is here after the Escort. The Capri comes after it in the brochure. And like I say, these are the early ones. This brochure is, like I say, May 1983. The Ford Sierra coming in 1982. I think it was October 82 when sales began. And in 1982, sales were slow. Like I say, it was quite a big change for Ford, and people struggled. The other problem, of course, was that the Cortina was such a popular car, and they were also selling off the old Cortinas that was left in stock at this time as well, so I'm sure that took some of the new Sierra sales, people buying the old Sierras, the leftover stocks, well into 1983, so that would certainly slow the sales for the Sierra as well. If we turn the page, it kind of like gives us some of the design. So this was like an original design for the Sierra. Even more controversial, wouldn't it, if it came out looking like that? Look at it, you notice the twin wings on the back, and this sort of like covered half of the rear wheels, almost like a Citroen-esque aerodynamic design before coming out, and it's still very much a controversial, they call it the jelly mold, as well as other not very flattering names. But if we go back to the Cortina brochure, look how square the car was that it was replacing. It's really no wonder that it was a kind of like shock to Ford followers and people who always bought a Ford. The other problem with this Sierra when it came out, of course, it was only available as a hatchback. Yeah, a very practical hatchback, and you could argue a much more practical car than the Cortina would be in a hatchback design, but still no saloon available at this time. We had to wait quite some time for the Sapphire to arrive. Now, Ford weren't stupid though. 1983, They also introduced the Ford Orion, which was a little bit more traditional. That was a saloon, kind of like an Escort with a boot, a smaller car, but nevertheless, they were always that if people found this too difficult and too strange a pill to follow. Nevertheless, this design made it a lot more coefficient than the Cortina. Drag coefficient around about 0.34 as it's showing you down here, which meant, it increased the economy, it increased the performance somewhat. If we turn the page still further, it's kind of like giving us more of these little designs and little sketches and dimensions and a few facts before bringing you to the base model Ford Sierra. And we get to this model, the not even an L Ford Sierra, just called the Sierra Saloon. And I have to admit, my favourite Sierra for many different reasons. It's just an interesting car. They never even bothered painting that front grille, it was just left black. We've got these very strange door mirrors on it. We have no rubbing strips down the side, no wheel trims, just this little cap, no colour coded fuel cap. They shaved everything they possibly could off it to save every little penny they could. It was just a really weird car, wasn't it? If you imagine going into the showroom and seeing this, I'm sure it was very easy for the salesman to talk you into buying the L model. I think it was only around about £500 difference between this very base model to the L. The L, of course, had nicely coloured front end. It had wheel trims. It had a more streamlined looking rear view mirrors, wing mirrors. It had side stripes, and we'll look at the interior and we'll see how basic the interior was. It's just a strange car why they actually made this in the first place, but it is my favourite for a few reasons. A, I would imagine it will be a very rare car today. I'm not sure who was really the audience. Did they sell these as fleet cars? Did many private buyers walk in there and say, I want one of these? I think mainly Ford introduced this just to get it under the £5,000 range. The Sierra range starts under £5,000. I would imagine that's probably the reason why it was introduced. I can't really see any sort of sales features on there because they did all these changes and it was only, like I say, £500 more to get a proper model. It's a strange one, but certainly today I would imagine that this, if you saw a pristine one of these and a pristine L, I would imagine this in the second-hand market would be more expensive now just because of its rarity, just because how nice would that be to take around to a car show now and just show people the unusual base features. And it goes on further. If we zoom in to the interior, if I can manage to zoom that camera as close as I can into there. Oop, a little bit too far, I think. And I think that's probably as close as I can get in there without it going out of focus too much. But you can see how basic that interior was. Here you would have had the radio, which is just a big blank where the radio would be. Here would be half of it would normally be a clock, but they've just opened it up to this full area of being somewhere to put these doors. How basic these doors look. You only had to move up to an L to have some kind of like a fabric sort of door card. Here it is just horrible plastic. Super basic, and really, like I say, not many features there that would really tempt you into this car at the time. Okay, so here it says the Sierra Saloon, economy and efficiency, the hallmarks of the Sierra. are personified in the saloon, which offers 3 petrol engines and a diesel. So even on this model you could have quite a choice of different engines, or indeed a diesel. A diesel kind of like making you think maybe this was kind of like a fleet vehicle. Maybe a taxi would be in this diesel, this very base model. Almost makes sense. The strange thing, guys, offering this very base model with these different features on it, the different wing mirrors, that black front grille, you kind of like think that would actually cost Ford more to produce this very different vehicle. In the text there it says, the least expensive Sierra, the saloon, sets the style for the whole range. It's remarkably well equipped for the price and still a driver's car through and through. For economy and efficiency, a Sierra hallmark, even the base model offers a choice of 4 engines. The 4-speed at this time, 1.3 and 1.6 models give nearly 45 miles per gallon in official steady 56 miles per hour tests, while the 1.6 economy and 2.3 diesel are designed especially for the driver who wants to make economy a priority. Both come with 5-speed gearboxes, with the 1.6 bettering 51 miles per gallon and the diesel topping 55. Just jump ahead, it kind of like tells us some of these weird features. From the outside, the Sierra Saloon is distinguished by its grey nose area, special grille and bumper treatment, and its smart steel wheels. There are new standards of comfort and refinement inside. The reclining front seats are trimmed with Windsor fabric, carpets extend to the load area floor, and the front doors have generous storage bins and armrests. There's a soft feel, full wood fascia, glove box with lid, and the front seat belts reels are concealed in the side pillars. So really trying to show that it does have some equipment on there for a base model. But overall, what a weird car it is. Okay, let's move on. We spent far too much looking at this model. We've got a lot more to get through in the range. It just, like I say, maybe it's just me. I just find that a fascinating model. We then move on to the Sierra L. It says, practical technology shines through in the L, which feature a 60-40 split rear seat to carry awkward loads as well as passengers. And we can see straight away, look at the inside. The inside straight away looks a more inviting place, and you can see these 4 nicer door cards rather than that horrible grey plastic in that super base model. And we'll also zoom in on the dash to see how that looks now in the L. Yeah, you can see the radio quite clearly. You can see we've now got a clock in there. It looks a nicer dashboard. Yeah, we've not got a rev counter, but you know, you can see how it wouldn't be hard to get someone to buy this over that crazy base model for just another £500. And there is a price chart at the end of this these few pages when we get through. So I will show you that price difference, which seems such a low amount that it doesn't seem to be worth buying, particularly like this nice blue colour. And you can see, you know, you got these rubbing strips on there. You got full width wheel trims now. Hard to see the different door mirrors. They're a bit dark here, but we'll probably get a better picture to look at that later on. Actually, I take that back. On the L model, it also has got these weird, cheaper door mirrors on there as that base model. It must be the GL that it moved up to a nicer door mirror. Don't want to read all the text on all these models because, you know, it's going to get too lengthy, this one, and there is a specification page on the end. But it says the Sierra L has such a high level of standard equipment, most people would expect it to cost a great deal more. And it starts talking about things like this split fold rear seats, which that base model didn't have. So that's the L. Move up to the GL, and I think you could kind of like make out these wing mirrors a bit better. You can see how they're more streamlined rather than this little bar. It's a far nicer thing indeed. I always thought the GL was a nice model to move into, really. Ford were clever with their ranges, weren't they? They really liked to show you if you had a base model. They liked to show you if you tried a little bit and got a nicer model. And they really liked to show off if you got the Ghia. You know, they really liked, I don't know what the idea was really. I guess the idea for you as the buyer was to spend a bit more money to get a nicer model. And if you had the base model, you know, it encourages you to think, oh, I would like higher up the range. So you probably got the same model of car, but a slightly fancier one. Nicer engine choices in this as well, which we'll look at. So nicer engine choice, like I said, choice of a 2 litre or 2.3 engine, plus luxurious levels of trim, drive the GL into the executive class. Do we have a rev counter now? That is the question. Kind of like hard to make out on that. I think it has got a rev counter, but we certainly will be able to show that later on in the specifications. The interior certainly looks a nice place. They do look like the lovely comfortable seats, and we've also got that rear armrest now as well. Is that kind of like a hint of a bit of wood? Hard to make out if that's wood or just black plastic, but certainly, you know, a couple of different colours on there make it look like a far nicer place to be. It says here, I do apologise for shaking the camera all over the place. It says here, the GL takes the Sierra firmly into the executive class, offering for the first time the 2 litre and 2.3 engines to back up the 1.6, 1.6 economy and 2.3 litre diesel. But unlike many models carrying the luxury label, the GL does not mean high running costs, heavy servicing and repair bills, or high initial cost. And we will, of course, look at the specifications in greater detail later on. So that's the GL, and kind of like at this stage, just remember the grille on this one. We've had that black grille, we've now got this colour coded grille. When we move on to the Ghia, we get something different again. So we turn the page and we've got these larger headlights on the Ghia, as well as different lights and indicators on the bumper, and there really isn't any sort of evidence of a grille at all on the Ghia. It's sort of like a bit of a nose breather, if you will. You know, the cooling and ventilation is coming from underneath, so they've kind of like blocked this down to give yet another front end treatment. You wouldn't really think it makes sense to have so many different front ends for one model. Surely that doesn't make financial sense, you would think. But again, Ford's philosophy at this time was really to identify the different models, and the Ghia was always the car you aspired to have. You probably couldn't afford it. You probably go, oh, I can't quite afford it, I'm going to get a GL. But you know, the Ghia was a little bit more expensive, and it certainly made you want to have it. At the top here, I don't know if you can read it, but it says sumptuous upholstery, superb equipment, add top line luxury to this Sierra's outstanding qualities. We'll have a little bit of a zoom in at that front end just to give you an idea of how that front end was. Completely different than the GL and the other models in the range. And that top of the line equipment. Before we just had a clock, remember, and space, and even on that base model all this area was just blank. Now we've got a few more more equipment. It looks like some kind of like cassette type multiplayer on there as well. We can clearly see we do have a rev counter on this model. And it looks like pretty much hard to see any sort of blanking plates at all on this top of the line model. The seats as well are very nice in this sort of like two-tone colour, and we certainly definitely can make out the wood inserts on this one. Overall, a very nice car. It says here, luxury car makers often take the view that if customers can afford their price, they'll also pay a lot for servicing and repairs. Like the other luxury Fords, the Sierra Ghia counteracts all that. Although it exudes comfort and refinement right down to the last thread of its quality Chatsworth trim, routine maintenance and other run-of-the-mill jobs are not more expensive in the Ghia than on the Sierra Saloon. And like I say, we'll look at the specs a little bit later on. And that's not quite the end for the Sierra. The Sierra Ghia gets a second page as well. Although surprisingly, we've still got wheel trims rather than actual alloy wheels, which always surprises me on a Ghia. You'd think that there would be alloys, wouldn't you? We do get a nice sunroof, kind of like showing you that split fold, which we might just zoom in on a little bit. Colour-coded, nice wing mirrors on there as well. But overall, really a little bit of a special car, marked of course by that lovely Ghia badge that really showed you, even from the side, oh, the car next to me, the guy next to me has got a little bit extra money. And here, as promised, is that sunroof and a look at that split fold rear seat, and a little bit of a better look at that little bit of wood trim, as well as that different front end treatment. Also thought I'd just quickly look at this before we move on. Even the Ghia model, no rear wiper. How weird is this? So the early ones didn't have a rear wiper. Maybe it's an option. We'll have a look at that in a moment. If we zoom back once again, turn that page. Have we finished with the range? No. The one we always forget about, the Estate. I particularly like the Estate, how practical it is. It's got a lovely rear end on that. We do get a wiper on the Estate though. It says on here, aerodynamic design allows for exceptional room and economy, and there's even self-leveling suspension on the Ghia. There you go, that's the model you wanted, isn't it? The Estate Ghia with self-leveling suspension. We will quickly just look at some of the text. So it says here, on the face of it, the problem was insurmountable. How could the Estate version of the Sierra be made anywhere near as aerodynamically efficient as the outstanding slippery saloons? Estate cars, it's commonly assured, simply don't lend themselves to advanced streamlining. The snag is the vertical shape of the back. The air passing over the roof doesn't flow smoothly downwards, causing vast eddies that act like huge invisible hand holding the car back. Not something I think the average person buying the Estate would really think about, but there you go. Yet in the wind tunnel, Ford's design engineers achieved the seemingly impossible, a profile with an identical drag coefficient of that of the saloon. It then goes to tell you the different models you can have. So the L, the GL and the Ghia are all available on the Estate model. Sadly, not that super base model. But never mind, let's turn the page and look at some specifications. So there we go, the end of the brochure, the Sierra range, standard and optional features, specifications and price guide. Yet there is a price guide which we'll have a look at the back as well. But let's zoom in on the specifications and we'll go through that slowly. I'm not going to read it all out, but certainly you can pause the screen if there's any particular thing you want to look at. Always remembering standard features are the black square, the open square is the optional features. So there we go, these are the models, the saloon and estate. Oh, the saloon and estate. So it looks like the saloon was also available as an estate. I don't think I've ever seen that base model saloon with that black front end as an estate. That would be an interesting car. Sadly, it doesn't show it in this brochure. But anyway, so the engine choices at this time, the 1.3, the 1.6, the 1.6 economy, the 2 litre, 2.3 V6 and the 2.3 diesel. These are the specifications as you can see. It moves down to show the exterior features of each model. And then something that it calls vision and exterior electrical. I'm particularly interested in that rear wiper. So tailgate, it is on there. Tailgate, where is it? Tailgate wash wipe. Yeah, on the saloons. You could actually have that tailgate wipe on the saloons on all models, but it was an option. It wasn't standard equipment, strangely. It was standard on all the estates. It may even give a price actually at the end here. So yeah, if you wanted that, a tailgate wash wipe, it was another £90.16. Interesting. And it also looks like you could have headlamp jet wash at this time as well. Available on all the models, surprisingly, for a bargain £97.19. Some more features. And then if we go to the opposite page, it does continue. Hopefully you can make that out. Maybe I should try and make that a little bit clearer. Just unfortunately it's in the fold there, sadly. And then finally, if we go right down to the bottom, there's a little bit of information about the in-car entertainment and the various different options. You usually get quite a bit of options on in-car entertainment for Ford at this time. Okay, so the specifications at each engine choice. Hopefully you can make that out. But if you've got any questions, certainly jot that in the comments and I'll try and answer them for you. The transmission and fuel consumption figures. Towing and weights. Insurance groupings. And finally, we get to that price guide. So that base 1.3, if you remember the one with the black grille, £4,974.17. So the base Sierra range starts below £5,000. I think that was the kind of like the key to that. But if you notice, the same model as an L, £5,443.67. Surely the average person would say, I'm going to spend that a little bit more to at least get the L model. And it looks like the estate version. Let's look at the estate, super basic estate. 1.6, 7,659, which seems a lot. That can't be right, surely. No, sorry, £5,770.10 for the base estate. So not a bad price really to get you into an estate. But similarly, to get your 1.6 litre estate, it was 6,247. So again, really worth at least getting to the L at that time. And then on the opposite side, you kind of like your most expensive model would have been your 2.3 Ghia estate, £9,395.67. Doesn't sound like a lot today, but that would have been an expensive car. I think my dad's Ford Sierra Sapphire in 1988 was under £10,000, just to give you an idea how expensive that was in 1983. So there we go, that comes today to the end of today's video for the Ford Sierra. If you have got any memories of the Ford Sierra, please do jot it in the comments. We always enjoy reading personal stories. But for now, we'll say thank you so much for watching. Please do like and subscribe. We'll see you very soon. Take care and goodbye.